Welcome to the Bettendorf Public Library's Take-Home Workshop. Today we're doing bleeding tissue cards, and we're going to be using a wax resist for this to get our design, and then this special tissue paper whose dye is intended to bleed off of there. It is not color safe. So I had never heard of this before. It's a really fun thing to play around with, so we're going to do that today. In your kit, you're going to have a piece of watercolor paper, and we're going to take this and we're going to fold it in half to make our card, and that card will fit in the envelope that's in your kit. You'll also find a white crayon. This is what we're going to use for our wax resist. You're going to find some bleeding tissue. So this is tissue in all different colors. And it's not just your standard tissue paper. It's actually called bleeding tissue if you want to go look for that. You're going to find a glove. So the ink from the bleeding tissue can stain your skin. So if you want to, you can wear a glove to prevent that. These are all big, but you don't need fine tactile detail on this. So if the glove is really bulky, it should be fine. What we're going to ask you to provide is some water, a way to get the water onto our watercolor paper. I'm just going to use a rag. You could use a brush, you could use a spray bottle if it sprays like a fairly fine mist of water. Anything like that will work. And then you should probably have something to protect your surface. Again, since the dye from the tissue paper can spread and get on things, we want to protect your work surface. Optionally, one other thing you can provide is tape. So watercolor paper, when it gets wet, it will curl up. Now it will flatten out again when it dries, but if it's not taped down, it doesn't flatten all the way. So you can tape it down, and you could tape it, like put a strip of tape right there, and it will hold it down. You can tape all the way around for a border, whatever you like. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the paper the way it is, and then I am going to, when it's all dry and done, I'll just take an iron to it and flatten it out that way. So the first step is putting our pattern on. And this is a little bit tricky because we have light colored paper and we're going to be using a white crayon. But you can kind of see it. Better light might be helpful. So I'm just going to draw a design, and this time I'm just doing stars, and I am pushing hard. I want to be able to see these as much as possible, and I want to be able to have a solid area where the wax is going to resist the dye. So there's some stars. Put another few small ones in there. Okay, you probably can't see these on camera, but I do have an arrangement of stars all around. So I'm going to set my crayon off to the side. I'm going to put on my protective glove. Now, I'm going to get this wet, and I'm going to do it in sections, because if I get it too wet, then it just dries out. I have to do it over again. I'm just going to take my paper towel, I'm dipping it in the water, and I'm getting it pretty wet. And then I'm going to take my tissue paper and just lay it on there and stick it down. And I'm just going to do this randomly. I might leave some of the white showing as much as possible. I'm going to try to make sure that I have tissue paper over the areas where I did my wax resist. Ooh, that works best, where I'm just dipping my finger in the water and then kind of sticking it down. You want the tissue paper to come into contact with the paper pretty thoroughly. Well, So what I said earlier about a rag or a paper towel, that works. I've done it, but frankly, this is working much, much better. And I'm not getting miscolored fingers that are going to stay like that for a few days, a day. So I'm just going to keep on in this way down for the whole card, and then the hard part is we have to let it dry. I've put all my tissue paper down, and I'm going to go through and just kind of blot it a little bit with a little bit more water. I want to make sure that these are wet enough that they stick to the paper, and I want to make sure that they bleed, because that is the whole point. And if you have little spots where you're don't actually covered with paper, if you get the tissue paper surrounding those spots wet, then they will bleed into those spots, and then you won't have white spots when you're done. Okay, so that is my card. Now, this is the hard part. I'm going to set this aside. I have to let this dry. Open up my workspace a little bit. But through the magic of video, I have one that I did a few days ago. A little bit different design. I did hearts instead. So this is what it looks like. And see how curled it is? I didn't tape this down or anything. But all of my paper stayed on there. And I'm just going to brush it off. And you can see where my hearts were. And some of them don't want to come off. So there's your note card. Now, I will take a warm iron and I will iron this flat. You can also put it, under a heavy book or something like that, the usual ways of flattening paper. But that there you have your is this dyed ones. Now here's another one that I did, again heart shapes, more overlapping. I did fewer colors on this one and more light colors, and I like the dark colors because with the cream colored paper there's not a lot of contrast there. I love the color of them. I love the randomness of them. I really want to see what you do. So share them with us on social media, and we'd like to thank the Bettendorf Public Library Foundation for sponsoring this take-home workshop.